Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Parna, the host of Beyond 1 Million Fireside Chat. In these segments, I have candid conversation with founders and experts who have built, battled, and broken through the 1 to 5 million revenue barrier. My guest today is the amazing Daniel Theobald. He is the founder and chairman of Vecna Robotics and co-founder and president of MassRobotics. Welcome, Daniel. It's so great to have you on our show.
Thank you so much for having me, and Stu.
Of course. Hey, Stu. So let's dive in. You are a serial entrepreneur and have launched several companies and organizations. What was the aha moment that led you to start your first company, and how did that shape your approach to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say in some sense, I was perhaps a reluctant entrepreneur. I feel like I probably would have been as happy or maybe happier working for another company if I could have just found a company that I felt like I could really believe in. I was working for a company right out of MIT, and it was just a job. I didn't feel like there was really a soul there, like I could really invest my whole self into it. And I spent a while looking around trying to find a company that I could really, feel like I could be part of in the big sense of being part of it, and just didn't find anything that I got excited about. So I realized, if I was having this much trouble finding a company that I could be excited about, probably a lot of other people were as well. And maybe we needed to start something new. And that's when I started Vecna Technologies, which, sort of one of the OG robotics companies back in the day. But we did a lot in healthcare. Initially, I was working in areas of patient check-in kiosks and portals, a lot for the Veterans Administration, the military, and also commercial healthcare spaces. But then we did a lot of R&D. I was, in some sense, kind of like an incubator for or a venture studio, maybe even. But the focus was on people from the beginning, and that's something I feel like has, I think in some ways the world's gotten better at it, but I feel like also it's kind of gotten lost in recent conversations, particularly with all the somewhat even ludicrous AI conversations that people are having, where they just seem to forget the idea that it's about people. Everything we do is about people. And whether it's, in business or personal life or whatever it is, people are the point. And if you forget that people are the point in business, then I feel like you're not building something that's going to last. So that was really my aha moment, is there needs to be a company that actually values people, that helps, that recognizes that people are the point, and can we build this? And so we did a lot of really interesting things. Like, for instance, from day one, we paid our employees to spend 4 hours of every work week doing community service, optional, right? It was a benefit that they could take advantage of if they wanted
That's
to.
awesome.
Yeah, and it was interesting because at the time I was told by a lot of people, people from Harvard Business School and Sloan School at MIT, they're like, oh, you can't do that. That doesn't make sense. You're going to be giving away most of your profits, blah, blah, blah. You can't run a company that way. And I just kind of felt intuitively that not only was it the right thing to do, but that it was going to work out. I didn't really necessarily even understand how, but I could not have been more right, I guess, about that, because we built this culture of people who truly cared. They cared about each other, they cared about our customers, they cared about our business, and that just created this amazing environment where we were able to be so much more successful, get so much more done than other companies in the space. And it also sort of became I guess, a self-filtering mechanism. Like when we would interview, and at the time I was almost exclusively just interviewing from MIT because that was my alma mater. That's what I knew. So we had a team of people, primarily from there and Harvard and, top schools in the area. But it was a really interesting self-filtering mechanism, because as I interviewed people, one of the things I talked a lot about was giving back. I talked about how we have this benefit that you can spend 4 hours of your work week, doing a Habitat for Humanity, or working at a soup kitchen, or mentoring a high school student, or whatever it was. And people who that didn't resonate with, by and large, wouldn't end up coming to our company. And I think real serendipity of that was that the type of people who give back, the type of people who care about people, they make the best coworkers, they make the best employees. And that's part of the way that we just got these absolutely, market defining results. We were able to get so much more done and have so much more success than other companies in the space because we had amazing employees. And the reason our employees were amazing were because they are the kind of people who identified as people who do community service, people who care about the world, people who care about each other. They're not just, selfish, trying to get as much as they can for themselves.
Well, that really resonates with me because one of the reasons I started my company 7 years ago was so I can spend more time giving back. So I spend, I would say, at least 30 to 40% of my time goes in helping underrepresented business owners or women in tech or mentoring founders because it is that satisfaction
Yeah.
of giving back and just seeing how other people, either whether they're struggling or they need a little bit of a nudge and a little bit of a support. I feel like that goes such a long way.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to hear you say that too.
Well, it's huge. And at the end of the day, it's your life.
It is.
It's your life. And this is the thing I think that so many entrepreneurs, maybe even investors, like they just don't seem to get it. Like, I'll be happy when I make this much money, or I'll be happy when I raise my new fund, or I'll be happy when my startup exits, or I'll be happy when we raise our next round. And, I had a very close friend who unfortunately died of cancer. But yeah, his name was Wilbur Jackson. I was on his deathbed. I was sitting next to his deathbed, I should say, talking to him. And he said, Daniel, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, Daniel, if you're not happy now, you won't be happy then. Then, referring to that fictional point in the future when we say, I'll be happy when. It never happens.
Mm.
And I honestly, I didn't even understand what he was saying for a while. It took me a while to really understand what that meant. If you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy then. What is then? Well, it's that, right? It's that we need to figure out how to be happy today. We need to figure out, and maybe some people take issue with the word happy. I don't care. Meaningful, peaceful, whatever your definition of what you want out of life is. But if it's not happening now, it's not going to magically
Never
happen
gonna
in the
happen.
future. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
totally
that's
with you.
got to be the priority. And a meaningful life, has other people in it.
Right. Right. So I understand you are into sustainable agriculture now.
Among other things. Yeah.
Among other things. All right. Tell me what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah. So, obviously, I spent a lot of time in healthcare. I spent a lot of time in warehouse automation. Great things, important areas. We have and continue to do a lot of innovation and make a big difference in those areas. But, I also realized for myself that I was not necessarily as passionate about, getting your package to somebody's doorstep 30 minutes faster. That fundamentally wasn't something that I got excited about. In many ways, of course, our consumer society has got a lot of problems. But I was very passionate about this idea of food and sustainability and people being able to live a healthy life and eating good food, not eating bad food is an important part of that.
Right.
And so I realized that, it'd be great if I could combine my passion for agriculture and the solution, technology. And if I was passionate about both the problem and the solution, that would be, sort of extra good, extra bonus. And so I just made an intentional decision to, spend time focusing on that problem. And I ended up in 2016 buying a farm in beautiful Rancho San Gregorio. It's this amazing place because we've got giant redwoods and ancient oak forests and rolling hills and streams and all these things, all kinds of animals and crops. And it's sort of out in the middle of nowhere, right? You can come to this ranch. It's 100 plus acres, 127 acres, and you just feel like you've kind of gone back in time. But yet we're right in the middle of everything. We're 30, 45 minutes from South San Francisco. We're, 30 minutes from Stanford University. We're 10 minutes from the beach.
That's
So
important.
it's this great thing where we're sort of in the middle of everything and also in the middle of nowhere. And we're working on really important problems. We're working on how to create technology that allows farmers worldwide to grow good, healthy food locally in an economically viable way and a sustainable way. All right, we've got two problems in agriculture. One is that inexpensive food generally isn't the food that you should be eating.
Right.
And we're importing it from all over the world, right? So we're creating problems for the environment as we're shipping and flying food around. It's very susceptible to disruption, right? Like when COVID happened and you couldn't get food in many places anymore. That's not great.
And now
Uh,
with tariffs.
exactly. And, the food is oftentimes designed, I guess, not the right word, but designed to travel well rather than being healthy and taste good. And we're not growing it in a way that's sustainable for the planet. And those farmers that are doing, sustainable, organic, healthy food locally, they can't survive. The economics just don't work out. So the problem we're trying to solve is, can we, through technology, through smart adoption of technology, allow small to medium-sized local farms actually grow the food that we should be eating locally in a healthy, in an economically viable and sustainable way.
No, I think that's brilliant. Just yesterday, actually, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she asked me where I shop. And of course, I said, Whole Foods is like 5 minutes from my home, so that's where I go because I get. And she goes, Parna, if I go to Whole Foods or Wegmans, my whole paycheck will be gone.
Yeah, most people
And
cannot afford it.
that was such a it kind of really put me in my place to say, okay, we take some stuff for granted, right?
Yeah,
And to your point, not everybody, I mean, even if people want to eat healthy or organic food, it is so out of their reach oftentimes.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
this is such a great cause that you're working on. Any examples there that you can share?
Well, I mean, just a comment on your previous statement. I mean, many people live in what we call food deserts,
Right,
where literally the only food that they can afford or have access to is Cheetos and Coca-Cola, right? And they live off of that.
right.
And we all pay the price for that at the end of the day. If you want to just get selfish about it, right? Our healthcare costs in this country, and so many problems are created by the fact that we are not feeding our population in a way that makes any sense at all. But you take it beyond that. Yeah, most people cannot afford organic food. Our eggs here, we have fancy pasture raised, free range organic eggs, and they're sold in a number of markets. And one of the markets in Palo Alto sells our eggs for $17 a dozen. Now that's great that we can sell our eggs for $17 a dozen, but that is so far out of reach of
Yeah,
most people. Everybody should be able to have access to healthy, eggs that are not filled with pesticides.
yeah,
So that's kind of the challenge, is like, how do we actually grow good food that's also economically viable? And so some examples, we are working on a new approach to IoT systems. Part of the idea is that we want the entire farm to be able to be controlled and measured, basically from your cell phone. So I'm going to know my soil moisture. I can turn on and off irrigation. I can open and close gates. I know where things are. I know where the animals are, et cetera, right? So this idea of really using what's called IoT, the Internet of Things,
right.
and big data, right? These are actually terms from the previous hype cycle, not
Yep.
the current AI and humanoid robotics hype cycle, but previous hype cycles. These technologies actually, when used in a practical way, can provide huge value. So as a farmer, one of the biggest problems I have is just consistency. Like, we'll go out and plant something and the workers will, forget to water it when we should water it. And then we lose the whole crop, or we don't get as big a yield as we should, or, just lots of problems. So if we can use technology to allow us to monitor and and do a better job of maintaining our agricultural practices, that actually allows us to move back to more traditional agricultural practices, which sounds kind of, like an oxymoron, that we're using technology to farm like we used to. But that's exactly what it is, because the problem now is labor.
Yes.
We cannot afford the labor. And it's not that we don't want to pay people enough or anything like that. That's not the problem. And there are just no people, quite frankly, who want to do a lot of these jobs anymore. And thankfully they don't have to, right? It's great that people don't have to be bent over working in the fields in the sun and the heat, getting heat stroke, breaking their backs to try and produce food for other people to eat.
Right.
But it creates this problem now where we can't afford to grow the kind of food and eat the kind of food that we should actually be eating. So that's where technology can step in and help close that gap. If we can use technology to make it so that we can actually empower the workers to do more, get more done in less time. So, now my workers don't have to walk all the way up the hill to move the overhead irrigation, the sprinklers, every, hour.
Right.
We can just have it scheduled on the phone, and then they can spend their time doing, higher value activities. Then
Yeah.
we can significantly increase the productivity on the farm. They can get paid a living wage, they can get paid more, and we can actually be an economically viable farm. Part of it, so there's the IoT side of it. And then there's also, we're doing some really interesting things with robotics. Katie Bradford is the CEO of Rotate 8, a company that's here on the farm. I'm seed investing in them. And they're building robotic solutions that are really focused on being extremely low cost. So farmers around the world can adopt, adapt, maintain this technology in a way that is actually, again, economically viable for them. So we're really excited about those projects, and we believe they're going to make a big difference, and not just have an impact on small and mid-sized farms. Ultimately, we believe that they have the power to transform the way we think about growing food. And it's going to take some time, but I'm really excited about the progress so far.
No, I think you're right. What advice would you give to founders who are trying to build a company that lasts beyond their product market fit stage?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts in this area. So I'll maybe just try and focus in on a couple, and maybe we can have another conversation. But first of all, I'm currently right now, I just released the first of several articles on LinkedIn around solo founders versus co-founders.
Hmm.
And this is an interesting topic because I have seen a lot of people feel like they can't start a company if they don't have a co-founder. Well, the interesting thing is if you actually look at the data, having a co-founder is an absolutely terrible idea. It is the
I would
absolute
agree
wrong
with
thing.
you.
Yeah, I mean, over 50%, I'm just going to use vague numbers here, but over 50% of startups fail due to co-founder conflict. If you actually look at companies that have successful exits, 52% of the companies that have a successful exit were solo founder. You might say, well, that's not so great. Well, yes, over 52% that had good exits were solo founder companies, but only 18% of the companies at that time were solo founder companies. Right? So by being a solo founder, your chances of creating a company that has a successful exit is many times higher. And you ask why that is, and there's a lot of reasons for it, which I would say maybe people should look at the posts. But you don't need a co-founder to start a business. And people, and like YC might reject you and say, "Oh, go get a co-founder." And they may say, well, we want to see that you can get somebody on your team. Much better to hire people.
Agree.
Co-founders, yes, can bring skills and maybe can bring conviction to VCs or an incubator, but at the end of the day, it ends up almost always destroying the company. So maybe I'll leave that one there for right now. I personally only invest in solo founder companies. The statistics are just too clear. If you're investing in a company with multiple co-founders, it's probably not going to go well. And certainly not going to go well for the founders. Even if the company is successful and has a successful exit, only 1% of founders, only 1% of VC-backed founders actually has a decent exit personally, right? The company may actually have a decent exit, but is that founder actually going to have a decent financial exit? Probably not. And again, for a whole bunch of complicated reasons that we can go into in another time. So that's number one. Number two is people believe this idea of, come up with an idea, pitch to an investor, be a billionaire, right? They kind of think it works that way, and it never works that way. Rarely works that way. We oftentimes hold up like the extreme edge cases, the Metas and the Googles and the NVIDIAs as the examples. Like, this is how you're supposed to do it. No, those don't even matter.
Yeah.
Like, those don't even count. It's not reality.
Mm.
Like, for 99.99999999999% of the people on the planet, that's not reality. It's never going to happen that way. And the way that good businesses are built is with customers. You find a real need, you provide real value. And I have all kinds of conversations with founders like, well, how can I build my business if I don't get investment? Like, oh, I mean, easy. You do it the way that everybody did for the, decades and millennia prior to VC even being a thing. I mean, VC is only on the scene now for a very short period of time. It didn't exist that long ago.
Okay.
And they'll say, oh, but that sounds so hard, like actually running a business based on real customers. I'm like, yeah, but what part of 1 out of 100 sounds easy to you?
Yeah.
So you can do it. You just need to actually build a real business. This idea of coming up with an idea and then going out and writing a bunch of software and then realizing that nobody actually wants the software you wrote. It's not great. You don't need to do it that way. I always tell people, keep your day job as long as possible.
Yeah.
Again, you'll get investors that'll say, you need to be 100% committed. Quit your day job. Well, that ends up actually just being a lot more about control.
Yeah.
Because they want to have control, right? And they don't have control over you if you've got infinite runway, if you've got another revenue source. And that's not always the case. And I'm not trying to villainize VC. There's a lot of great VCs out there. I mean, I'm a VC myself. But founders just really need to understand the game they're playing. And I think a lot of times, because founders are first-time founders quite oftentimes young, we can be a bit naive. We don't really understand the game. It's like, hearing that you can make money playing blackjack in Las Vegas. You don't understand the rules of the game. You don't understand that there are 52 cards in the deck. You don't understand that there are 4 suits. You don't understand the rules. And yet you go and you show up at this table and you somehow think you're going to make money.
Right.
The statistics don't bear it out. They don't understand the game. They don't make money.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to not just rush in. You really need to understand who your customer is. And if you can't get somebody to start paying you to solve the problem, whatever the problem is you're solving, if you can't get somebody to start paying you to solve the problem even before you have a product, then it's probably not going to be successful.
I think that's a really, really good tip, because like you said, there's a lot of founders that I work with, and it's like, okay, it's working and I have one customer. Now I got to go for the VC funding partner, like, build our deck and tell us what the pitch
Yeah.
is. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. So you have
Yeah.
one client, that's great. You're bringing in the money, so perhaps you go get another one, and
Yeah.
you bring 3, and that
Yeah.
shows your market momentum. It shows that you are solving a problem that people are paying you for, and then consider. But
Then consider
yeah,
it, right? No, I mean, that you nailed it. I mean, that's the point. When there is proof that adding investor money to your business will produce better results, great. And many of the best businesses were started without any outside investment at all, right? They bootstrapped. They had their first customer, then they added their second one, then they added their third one, then they added their fourth one, then they added their 10th and their 100th and their 1,000th.
yeah,
And we tend to feel like, well, if I could just get a bunch of investor money, then I could go hire a salesperson and then everything's just magically going to happen.
yeah,
Never works. I mean, almost never works that way.
yeah, yeah,
You, as the founder, need to figure it out. Once you've figured it out, once you've got way too many sales calls that you can't handle them all yourself, then yeah, maybe hire somebody and teach them what you're doing. But if you're going to hire somebody to figure it out, it's not going to happen. I've never seen that work. You have got to figure it out as founder and teach somebody else how to do what you're doing. Hiring somebody to do it for you ain't going to work.
Yeah.
And I think maybe this is a little bit the issue with co-founders, right? Why people go to this co-founder thing. It's like, oh, I need to have a co-founder that knows how to do this side of things. You can understand the logic there, but no, you need to figure it out. Like if you want to be a successful founder, you need to understand the entire business. You need to understand the product, the technology. You need to understand financing. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand HR. You need to understand accounting. You need to understand all those things. And that's work. That's why they call it work.
It is work, yeah. It's hard work, not just work. So as you look back on your very successful career journey, what would you tell your younger self about growth, leadership, or success that you didn't know then?
Yeah, mainly trust your gut. Right. I spend a lot of times trying to help founders gain confidence in themselves because that's the key. You have to have confidence in yourself. You are the person who is thinking about your particular business, again, product, market, all of these things. You're the one thinking about it when you're in the shower. You're the one thinking about when you wake up in the morning. You're the one dreaming about it, right? You're the one who can't go to sleep at night because you're thinking about this. Nobody else. And so you're going to have instincts. You're going to have gut feelings about how to do things, and you need to listen to that. I can't tell you the number of times early in my career I would let somebody, I will just say less inspired because, again, they're not the one thinking about it all the time. I'd let somebody less inspired convince me of something that didn't feel right to me. I'm like, oh, well, they sound really confident, so they must know what they're talking about. So, I should do it this way. And then looking back after it didn't work out and be like, crap, I should have followed my gut.
Right.
Had that experience again and again and again. I should have followed my gut. The fact of the matter is you're at the helm of the ship. You're the one steering it. You can't do it by committee. It's got to be you.
Yeah.
You got to make the decisions. They got to feel good. Are you going to make mistakes? You're going to make mistakes all the time. And that's okay. That's part of the process. But don't feel like there's any safety in following advice, whether it's advice of friends or family or business partners or advisors, and certainly not investors, right? Advice is cheap, and they will tell you things that make them feel good about themselves, but there's no safety in it for you, right? Because at the end of the day, when it doesn't work out, you can't say, well, I did what you told me to. Okay, well, then here's your successful exit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You have to make the decisions. You have to own it 100%. And people love giving advice. And you need to keep in mind that most of the people giving advice haven't ever done what you've done. As a matter of fact, none of them have ever done what you're doing.
Yes.
And they don't understand.
And a lot of them are experts because they've read books or written blogs, and that's what they're giving free advice. And the poor founders are so overwhelmed with so much advice that they don't know which one to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Or somebody had made some money somehow, and now, and now their advice is perfect. I always tell people, I'm like, don't take advice, and certainly don't take my advice, right? What you need to do when you hear information is you incorporate it into your world model in your head, right? We talk a lot about AI models right now. Well, this is the model that really matters, the world model in your head. Why? Because this is the model that allows you as a founder to predict the future. If your model is good, you will be more accurate at predicting the future. If you can predict the future, you can make a lot of money, right? It's really that simple. So when you hear advice, you should incorporate it into your world model. You should test it. You should decide whether or not it makes sense. And then once it's in your world model, you're going to be making decisions based on that. But you can't blindly, if somebody says, oh, you need a CFO. Oh, I better go get a CFO. They said I need a CFO. If I don't get a CFO, I'm not a real business. No, that's bullshit. Excuse me. Can I say that? You need to do what actually makes sense for your business. And if somebody's telling you need a CFO, if you're not convinced you need a CFO, don't do it. If you don't understand why that's actually going to make sense for you, or that you can actually even find somebody who's going to do a good job of it, you don't want to do it. You've got to own it 100%. And I also have to remind people a lot of times that investors are just that. They invested. They put some money into your business. They're not running it. You have got to run it. And whether or not they ever put any money in the future, as a founder, you don't work for the investors. In some sense, they should be working for you. Right? You should be keeping your investors busy. You should be giving them homework. You should be asking them for, connections and new business opportunities. The CEO doesn't work for the investors. And so many founders make that mistake. They go into a board meeting and investor will say, oh, and you need to do X, Y, and Z. And then the founder's got this long laundry list of things that they need to do before the next board meeting. Well, when are they actually running the business? They're doing a bunch of oftentimes worthless stuff that's not actually going to make a difference. But they feel like somehow there's safety in it because an investor told them to do it.
Right. Well, we've covered a lot of topics and insights. But before we wrap, what's the one tip you'll give to an entrepreneur who's looking to grow their startup to about 5 million?
Yeah, I'd say customer, customer, customer. You got to focus on the customer. So how do I distill that into one tip? It's really about finding the right problem to solve and then not trying to grow too fast, right? Which may sound counterintuitive to how do you get to 5 million. But you want to get to 5 million profitably, right? So the best way to get to 5 million is to be a profitable $100,000 company to start with. If you can achieve profitability, you can grow it in most cases. If you're trying to grow the business and you're not profitable because ultimately you haven't figured out the unit economics or the customer experience or whatever it is, then you're going to grow something that ultimately is not going to work. It's not going to scale. It's easy to raise money. People spend all this time like talking about how to create the perfect pitch deck and how do you do this and how do you do that and how do you convince investors to give you money. At the end of the day, building a real business, that takes a great founder. That takes that's challenging. Just about anyone can convince someone to give them money if you're tenacious enough about it, but it's not going to last. So yeah, focus on customers and profitability, and then you can grow to $5 million in a way that's actually going to last.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your time and the awesome insights that you shared today.